going to introduce to you now our special guest speaker this evening, and his name is Isaac Crockett. I've had the privilege of getting to know Isaac and his family just a little bit over the past few months. We've been at some conferences together, and boy, it's wonderful to meet a young man and a young dad who is just sold out for the Lord. He's a pastor. He loves speaking in the Mid-Atlantic region. He's very involved in Stand in the Gap Ministries, and he and his wife have 3 children, and he's very involved in their homeschooling. And so I want to bring Isaac and I think his children to the screen. Hey, Isaac, why don't you introduce the kids to us real quick?
Hey, thank you, Zan. Thank you very much. You guys want to say your names real quick? Start with Levi.
I'm Benji. I'm Kate.
So these are my kids. 12. Levi's 12, Kate's 10, and Benji's 7. So we've actually enjoyed using BJU Press since Levi was in K4. So it's been a while.
That's amazing. Well, you got some beautiful kids. It's so good to see y'all. Cheer for your dad.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
So we're so excited about the ministry you have, Isaac, but also the heart you have for family discipleship. And I know that's what you're going to talk to us about tonight. And so I'm just going to turn the screen over to you, and you share with us what the Lord has put on your heart.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Zan. And it's we always enjoy at Stand in the Gap Media the working relationship we've had with you. I know you were just on our program not too long ago. Maybe I'll say more about that. And I think there'll be some links where if you would like to listen or watch or read the transcript from the last time that Zan was on our Stand in the Gap Today radio program, you could do that. But we've had a close relationship for many years, since the beginning of our radio program, especially with BJU Press. And so it is always an honor any chance I have to be with folks from BJU Press or to talk about them. And they've had such an impact on my life. I grew up in a school where we used a lot of BJU Press curriculum, but my children have always been homeschooled and use that. And so I'm very, very thankful for that. But tonight I do want to talk to parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, extended family, whoever you are that is interested in homeschooling and interested in discipling your children. I know that the modern homeschool family is different, than they were maybe a few years ago or a number of years ago. And yet there's a lot of things the same. And I think most of us can very much understand, where Zan, where you were coming from when you started homeschooling, where it, kind of felt like things were against you, the government and the schools and all. There was a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape. And we praise the Lord for some of the headway that you made that opened it up for others of us. But in the last 2 years, I think the eyes of parents and grandparents and church members and every average American have really been opened to some interesting things that are going on in maybe what we could call our government school system and the public schools. And so, before I get started, Eva, I just want to say my wife, she was adopted from Kolkata, India, but her family, her dad, he retired from the public school system. He worked in the public school system for over 30 years. And while he was involved in the public schools, he and his wife were homeschooling their 4 children. Myself, I taught in the public schools for about 5 years. And even while I was teaching in the public schools, we were homeschooling our children. And I found many other teachers and workers in the school system who didn't put their own children in the public school, which was interesting, especially Christians. And so that, it's a really neat thing going on there. But I also want to just welcome anyone and everyone who's watching this, anyone who's curious about BJU Press or curious about homeschooling. And I understand, we have fathers and mothers watching this. We have grandparents watching. We have some of you are grandparents who are homeschooling your grandchildren, or in the case of like my family, grandparents who are helping people like myself and my wife. My wife is just really organized and really good at the details. And even still, we really appreciate the help that we have now. We didn't always have it, but we've moved to Corning, New York, near her family. And one of those decisions and where we were going to go and what ministries and what work we were going to be involved with was being able to have people help us with homeschooling our children. So whatever, maybe you're just somebody in the church who's helping somebody who's homeschooling the children. Maybe you're homeschooling somebody else's children because you have that opportunity. Maybe some of you are like my wife and I, where you are now working from home and you are now able to start homeschooling their children, or for whatever reason. We're just so thankful that God has opened your eyes to this opportunity, and we can use it as a resource and as a tool. Because to start with, one of the things that really stands out in my mind when I think about discipleship and this awesome nexus that there is between homeschooling and discipling my children, and just having family, spiritual growth as a family. Actually, goes back to an instance that was not such a fun thing, kind of an awkward thing, but we were coming back home. I was pastoring a small church in rural Pennsylvania, or in a rural part of a city, and came back home from being out of state where I'd been preaching. And we got home, and our house isn't always as clean as we would like, because we're a homeschool family and we work from home. You can imagine sometimes things get a little chaotic. But I went upstairs and I came back and I said, honey, I said, I think something happened while we were gone. I know that sometimes, the kids can make a mess, but something is just drastically wrong. And so we went up, and sure enough, somebody had broken in and ransacked our house. And so we called the police, and by the time the state trooper showed up to investigate, we were talking and going through the different things. And we were trying to figure out what they took, what they hit us up for. And it turns out that if you're very poor and you don't have a lot of earthly possessions, you're kind of lucky when you get robbed, because they can't steal much. The thieves didn't really find anything valuable. They took some jewelry. Again, it wasn't actually valuable jewelry. Some of it maybe had sentimental things to the people who had given it to my wife. I remember my underwear drawer had been pulled out and gone through. And I asked the state trooper, I said, why would they go through my underwear drawer? And he said, well, a lot of times people keep valuable stuff, money or whatever. And I said, in this house, clean underwear is a valuable commodity. I said, I don't know why they did that. But he was asking me about my valuables. And I made some sort of statement at that time to him. I said, well, it doesn't appear they took anything of any, great value. I said, besides my real valuables, they couldn't get to. And he said, what do you mean by that? He said, where are your real valuables? I said, well, as a Christian, as a believer, our treasure is in heaven. He said, oh, okay, yeah, you're a Christian. Okay, I get it. He said, well, what kind of valuables are you talking about when you say your treasures are in heaven? And it made me think. And one of the first things that I said when I said, what in my life is the most valuable? I said, well, my children and the souls of my children. And he said, okay, I think I get it. And, that's what I want to talk to you tonight about, is what is your child's soul worth to you? Matthew 16:26, Jesus was talking about being willing to sacrifice for the kingdom. And he makes this statement in Matthew 16:26. He says, for what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world? And what's the next part? And lose his own soul. Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Well, as a parent or a grandparent or some sort of maybe a father figure, or mother figure, extended family member, or close friend of the family who's helping homeschool children, what is a child's soul? What is your child's soul worth to you? And, one way I think of this is, if thieves were to break in, now I thank the Lord, I've been robbed in different times. I've worked in, I've preached and done mission work in other countries. I've worked in inner city schools. I've had things stolen. I've been mugged or tempted to be mugged many different times. But we were broken into while we were gone. And I thank the Lord that we weren't home. I have a good friend who's a pastor in New York City, and he's been broken into while he was home and while his children were asleep. But imagine with me that somebody were to break into your house when you're home and your children are home, and they say, either give us all of your earthly possessions, your money and your valuables that way, or give us your children. Well, none of us would have to think twice about that. We would all say, well, take our possessions, take our money, take our earthly possessions. You can't take our children. Well, when it comes to our, the spiritual battle for the souls of our children, I'm afraid that sometimes families get so caught up in work and in making money and in, worrying about income and worrying about grocery bills and this bill and inflation, worrying about all these things that we do have to worry about in this world, that sometimes the spiritual growth or the soul of our children doesn't get the priority that we know if we were asked it should get. And so for my family, for my wife and I, we've, the Lord has been able to use homeschooling as a great tool to be an opportunity for us to disciple our children and to make sure that they have a biblical worldview. I remember a number of years ago, I was actually surprised. I've learned a lot about biblical worldview, and that's a big thing we talk about on Standing the Gap Media. But many years ago, I was talking with apologist Josh McDowell. We were in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He was talking to some of us at a group with Child Evangelism Fellowship of Eastern Pennsylvania. And I remember him telling us that a person's worldview doesn't start when they get to college. It starts before that. It doesn't start in high school. It starts before that. Not even middle school or elementary school. It starts before elementary school. He said, our biblical worldview, how we see life, the way we think about things, starts to develop as young as 18 months old. And it is mostly developed, over 90% finished by the time we're 12 years old. Just a few days ago, I was talking with researcher Dr. George Barna, a close friend of ours at Standing the Gap Media, and we use his research. He's on with us on a regular basis on TV and radio, and he's really become one of those men who's a mentor, one of those kind of men for me. And he was talking about this too, and he said, yes, sometimes as young, they say 13 to 15 months old, our biblical our worldview starts to be founded, and it's usually mostly come full circle mostly by the time we're 12 to 13 years old. So if you're waiting until someone's in college or even high school to start trying to give them a biblical worldview, you're way too late. It starts even before preschool. And the Bible says in Proverbs chapter 1 verse 8, it says, my son, hear the instruction of thy father and forsake not the law of thy mother. Parents, that's us. We are to be instructing our sons and daughters and giving the law of God to our children. Proverbs 23:22, it says, hearken unto thy father that begat thee, and despise not thy mother when she is old. And some of us homeschool parents, I think we feel like we're aging even older as we deal with our children. But no, we should be influencing them. So here's what I want to point out to you tonight. We need to plan to disciple our children. And to do that, we need to plan, we need to organize and plan to make ourselves available. My wife loves to plan things out ahead. Her whole family, they're planners. They like calendars and day planners and things. And we need to be planning. And as homeschool parents, we plan for lots of different things, but we need to plan in time to give biblical instruction to our children, time to make ourselves available to share the law of God or the biblical worldview that we have. And we need to be grounded, first of all, ourselves in the Bible and ourselves have a biblical worldview so that we can share that with them. But then we need to have time for that. You go about organizing each school day or each year or quarter of the year, and we need to make sure there's time. And that might look like family devotions or biblical worldview training in our house. It looks a lot like hymns. We sing a lot of hymns, older hymns, newer hymns. We love the hymns. Not too long ago, I was getting to interview Keith Getty on our radio program from Getty Music, and he was talking about the importance of Bible doctrine in the hymns and that how it sticks with children and helps them and gives them a biblical grounding and biblical worldview. Hymns, Bible memory verses, catechisms, all of those are things that we use with our children. And those are things that the BJU Press incorporates into the curriculum with them and the teaching and the teachers on the BJU Press digital content. It's all right there. And so we need to have time, and we also need to create time to listen to our children. It's not just about talking to our children and giving them advice, but I found it's not just with children, it's with any relationship. As a pastor, I get this with the members and congregants of my church and leaders of my church, spending time with them a lot of times so that I can listen to them. Same thing with my wife, spending time with each other so we can listen to each other and just be around each other. So this is not something we always think about, but that is important to have time so that we can listen. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, very common verse. I think we all know if we've studied, parenthood very much. And it says this, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. That's a biblical worldview right there, that nurturing them in the things of the Lord. Now, while this Bible verse in particular says fathers, I know that what it's referring to overall, as parents, mothers can definitely fit into this. Father figures and parent figures can fit into this. It certainly, doesn't exclude moms, for example, from this, but it definitely does not eliminate or exclude fathers. And so if there's any dads listening, or any of you talking to dads of homeschool families or families in general, any family, dads, we need to be intentional about discipling our children. We can't just say, oh, well, to our wives, honey, if you want to homeschool the kids, or if you want to take the kids to church, or if you want to do that with the kids, you go ahead. That's all right. I'll support you in doing that. No, we need to be a part of nurturing our children in the Lord, of raising them in the admonishment, the biblical worldview. It's not something that just mom does, something that we should do. And hopefully you have extended family that could help too. It's really great when you have Christian family. I know not every one of you has that. Not every one of you has a Christian spouse. I understand that. But when it can happen, it is such an amazing blessing to work together to disciple our own children. And so fathers that are listening, when you can be a big part of handing down a biblical worldview to your children, we want to be actively involved, not passively just tolerating what's going on in our home, actively a part of it. I'm not saying that you have to teach all the lessons or understand everything that's going on, but my prayer is to be able to help my wife and to help my children, and that we can grow together as a family. Now, I want to share just a couple things as I wrap things up now. And I'm not by any means saying, oh, you need to do what I'm doing or do things exactly the way that I'm doing. But I could just talk to you about, as Jill and I have prayed and studied scripture and asked the Lord to guide us and to direct us in what is best for us and for our children. Some of the things that we have come to realize, going back to that question, what is the worth of my child's soul, is we say, okay, we are going to put the training of our children, whatever form that looks like. For right now, since my oldest son started, K4, it's been homeschooling. We are going to put that training of our children above a lot of other things in our home, including jobs. And again, I'm not saying we don't work. We do work, but the work that we do and the income that we seek and all of that takes second place to training our children in the admonition and nurture of the Lord. We've decided to put training our children at a level that's even higher than what ministry we decide to get involved in. And as someone who pastors and church planning, and I work with American Pastors Network, and right now I'm helping with 2 different churches, and I do a lot of church consulting and different things. I am not saying that we're not involved in ministry or that we're not involved in church. No, please don't misunderstand. We are involved in ministry, but we realize that we have a ministry and an obligation, a responsibility, I should say, to our own family first and foremost. It's kind of like when you're on a plane and they talk about if there's turbulence and problems and the oxygen masks come down, make sure you put your oxygen mask on first so that you can help others put theirs on. We feel like as a family, our family ministry to each other comes first before we can look at how we minister to others. That's something that we've decided to do. And so for us, what it looks like is that right now we're homeschooling our kids. I'm self-employed / working, for family work. My brother has several different companies that my wife and I help with. Our last name is Crockett, and he helps market and sell puppies. So Crockett Doodles, if any of you are interested, he actually gives a discount to homeschool families. But we do that. I'm heavily involved with Standing in the Gap Media. I'm a co-host on the radio, which we have daily radio programs. I'm a co-host on our TV. The radio goes out all over the nation. The TV goes out throughout the Mid-Atlantic, and then it is picked up across the nation. And then all of that is online on our podcasts and things. And you can look at that online at standingthegapmedia.org. You can see more of those links and things, but I'm heavily involved with that. I love being involved with that. I love helping pastors in churches. We're involved with church, but we homeschool our kids and we work our schedule around our home and around being together most of the time. Zan could tell you, even when we were talking about different things, including this, so it's an online event. Yeah, sure, I can do that. She invited me to a conference that we were at in person, a few, out of state, a few weeks or months ago, and I said, well, let me think about that. And I had to work my schedule around so that I could, make it fit our family schedule and bring our whole family to, it wasn't just leaving my wife all by herself with the kids. And so we actually were able to incorporate another conference and several speaking engagements, some of them in the area around where I was at that conference. And we worked it all together, because it's not just about Isaac or the ministry that Isaac's in, or just about my wife, Jill, or it's about all of us as a family unit growing together and discipling the children together. And so it's not always an easy thing. Another thing real fast here, but I know sometimes people say, wait, you guys are around each other almost every day, most of the day. Don't you get on each other's nerves? And of course, yes, any of you who are around your family or a certain person all the time, it is easy to get on each other's nerves, but it's also a humbling part of discipleship, is that our kids see when we mess up, our kids see when we sin, when we make mistakes, and to have to humble ourselves and say, you know what, Lord, please forgive me. And hey, kids and Jill, I shouldn't have done that. What I did there was wrong. That's not what I've trained you all to do. But being able to model what it looks like when we do mess up for our children gets to be kind of an object lesson for them. So it's not always easy, but again, I'm going to harken back to that question, Lord, what do you want me to do? What is my child's soul worth? Is it worth a job? Is it worth a car? Is it worth fancy clothes or certain pleasures or other treasures of this world? Yes, it is. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that if you homeschool your children, you'll never have any problems and everything will go perfectly for you. No. Please don't misunderstand me. But if we follow God's instructions and instruct our children with a biblical worldview, we are giving them the opportunity to make those decisions. We are giving them a foundation of a biblical understanding, a biblical worldview as a foundation that they can build off of. And then it's up to them for the Holy Spirit to work in them, for them to make the right decisions. And, if you have children who have turned away from the things of the Lord, I'm not saying that's your fault. Each of us is responsible for his or her own decisions. But as parents, we're responsible to give our children a foundation, to give them the instructions of the Lord, to give them a biblical worldview. And so that's my prayer, that my wife and I, that we would be able to do that and work with our family, with my mother and my wife's parents and extended family. There's so much more we could talk about, but just to see the Lord working in that way. And for those of you grandparents or outside family, we're just so thankful that you're interested in helping, and all of us, that we would be looking to that next generation and looking at giving them a biblical worldview. Before I turn things back over to Zan, I do just want to mention some of the different resources that I've found helpful. Of course, I'd like to start with standingthegapmedia.org. We have a lot of different free resources on our website and other places that you can find. And if you get a chance, Zan was with us. It's not a joke. She was with us on April 1st. It wasn't an April Fool's joke. It was a wonderful, wonderful radio program. It was also streamed on Facebook Live, so there's some video of it. There's the full program is out there on podcast and archive, as well as different parts, bits and pieces of it, shorter ones if you just want to hear a couple minutes of it. I think you will really enjoy hearing some of her testimony and heart. Zan was one of those people, like a lot of you watching probably, never thought that she would be a homeschool mom. And how the Lord led her in that way is amazing. She talks about when she was over in Russia, and there's this statement about men have forgotten God that Alexander Solzhenitsyn made. And just some of her firsthand experiences over there in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Incredible, especially given the situation going on in Russia right now. I would highly encourage you to go. And if you can listen, it's about 45 minutes. Listen to that whole radio program. I think it will really encourage you and bless your heart and be something you want to share with friends. And there's other things like that on there. Some also, we're a ministry of the American Pastors Network, so you can go there as well. So we have standingthegapmedia.org, AmericanPastorsNetwork.net, and we have things going on. We have things going on in Ukraine right now. We have a Ukraine initiative. You might want to look that up. Really cool things that are happening on the ground, sending people from our churches in America to, we have a lot of good pastor friends, Ukrainian pastors on the ground in Ukraine, worshiping together, but spreading aid and financial help to our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. And we have other things going on at the American Pastors Network. We have 11 Principles to National Renewal, a book, a video that goes along with this, and an actual whole video series about that. Just all kinds of really cool free resources for you personally or for your family that will help build a biblical foundation, a biblical worldview. And then some of our friends that are on our program a lot, I already mentioned Dr. George Barna. He's been involved with the Cultural Research Center out of Arizona Christian University. You can go to georgebarna.com or look him up, Google that, George Barna and the Cultural Research Center. Some really exciting things going on. In fact, not too long ago, I was on a panel discussion with them out there. We're making that into a book, and it's about millennials and biblical worldview or lack thereof and what we can do to help. Lately, he's been doing one about parents, about current American parents and their biblical worldview and how that affects their parenting. Just lots of helpful resources. There's Alex Mcfarlane. Dr. Alex Mcfarlane has a great ministry, Truth for a New Generation, and he speaks all over. He's been a pastor, a seminary president, a professor. He's written a lot of books, but one that I really like that I use with my kids it's called 100 Bible Questions and Answers. And again, you can look up some of the programs he's been on with us in TV and radio, or his ministries, Alex Mcfarlane. And then there's Answers in Genesis. We love having Ken Ham and his son-in-law and different ones from his group out there that come and they speak on our TV or our radio program on a regular basis and give a lot of good, helpful apologetics.